There comes a moment in your life when you realize that no amount of effort can make someone see your worth until you stop trying, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring more about yourself. For so long, you gave everything, your energy, your time, your loyalty, your love, hoping that the more you gave, the more they would show up. But that's not how attraction works. That's not how alignment works. It's not how power works, because the truth is, real connection doesn't happen when you chase. It happens when you become the thing worth chasing. You think pulling back means giving up, but in reality, it's stepping into your power. When you stop overgiving, over-explaining, and over-investing in someone who hasn't matched your energy, you don't lose them. You find you, and when that happens, something remarkable unfolds. Your energy shifts. You stop operating from lack and start radiating from self-worth. That shift doesn't go unnoticed. In fact, it's the exact moment they begin to notice everything they used to overlook. When you stop trying, they feel the absence. They feel the difference, and it hits them harder than any words ever could, because people don't value what they're always handed on a silver platter. They value what they feel slipping through their fingers. Your energy was once on tap. Now it's sacred. Once you stop trying to prove you're worth loving, something unexpected happens. They start thinking about you. They start wondering. They start remembering the way you made them feel. And it's not because you did anything new. It's because you finally did less. You stopped showing up in places you weren't respected. You stopped chasing. And suddenly they started. That's the paradox. The moment you let go, they feel the pull. The moment you stop trying to win them, you win back yourself, and in doing so, you become the version of you that was always worth pursuing, but now you're no longer available in the same way. And that new version of you, she's magnetic, she's grounded, she doesn't settle, she doesn't beg, she attracts, because when you stop trying, you're no longer leaking energy, you're leading with it, and when they come back, and they often do, they come back to someone different. Not colder, not harder, just clearer. You didn't go silent to hurt them. You went silent to heal you, and from that healed place, you're no longer chasing anything that doesn't chase you back. Because you've learned real love doesn't require you to shrink, to prove, or to pursue. It meets you where you are, or it falls away, and that is your power. When you try too hard to be seen, loved, or accepted by someone else, you unknowingly send a message that you don't fully believe you're enough on your own. The harder you chase, the more you tell the other person, on an energetic and psychological level, that you're the one who needs them, not the other way around, and that energy speaks louder than anything you say out loud. You might believe your effort shows loyalty, devotion, and commitment, but to someone who hasn't earned that kind of investment, it can come across as desperation or emotional insecurity. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But awareness is power, and the moment you become aware of how over-efforting affects the dynamic, you're finally in a position to change it. Trying too hard is often rooted in fear, fear of being abandoned, overlooked, or unloved. So you show up early, stay late, explain yourself constantly, compromise too much, or say yes when you want to say no. Not because you're fake, but because you're trying to secure love through performance. But love doesn't work that way. Attraction doesn't grow in forced spaces. It grows in freedom, in curiosity, in energy that moves, not chases. When you try too hard, you become overly available, emotionally predictable, and energetically unbalanced. The mystery is gone, the polarity dissolves, and in trying to win them, you begin to lose pieces of yourself. The more effort you make to gain their attention, the more their subconscious mind registers you as the pursuer. And that shifts the power dynamic. It puts you in the role of constantly proving your value and them in the position of choosing whether or not to accept it. But here's the truth. People value what they work for. People respect what requires their focus and effort. That doesn't mean you should manipulate or play games. It means you should hold your worth high enough to stop throwing it at people who don't reach for it. Because when you're the one always initiating, always fixing, always chasing, the other person doesn't feel inspired to step up. Why would they? You're doing all the emotional labor for them. Letting go of that pattern doesn't mean giving up on connection. It means surrendering the illusion that love must be earned through constant effort. When you stop trying, you allow room for natural chemistry, natural balance, and natural desire to develop. You return to your center. You stop broadcasting scarcity and start embodying value. And what's wild is this: when you stop trying so hard, people often start chasing, not because you manipulated them, but because you removed the pressure. You became still, grounded, centered, and in that stillness they begin to notice your absence. They begin to realize they were receiving something rare, something genuine, and they start to feel the gap. That's when attraction is reignited, not through effort, but through energy. And that energy only shows up when you finally stop trying to prove your worth and start owning it. Your energy introduces you before you even speak. When you're chasing, over-explaining, or constantly reaching out, the energy you're putting out says, "I need you to validate me. I need you to choose me so I can feel secure." And even if those aren't your words, they're being felt. People can sense it, consciously or unconsciously. The vibe of neediness, of over-effort, of emotional dependency travels faster than logic. But the moment you stop trying, your energy shifts. It goes from grasping to grounded, from anxious to aligned, from external validation to inner certainty. That's when everything begins to change. This shift in energy is not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming clear. It's about no longer pouring energy into proving your value and instead embodying it. You move differently. You stop texting first every time. You stop anxiously waiting for their reply. You stop overanalyzing every word, every action. You let go of trying to control the outcome, and that detachment. It's magnetic because suddenly the dynamic that once felt one-sided becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability creates curiosity. Curiosity leads to interest, and interest creates pursuit. People respond to energy, not effort. You could say all the right words, send all the right messages, make all the right moves. But if the energy underneath it feels desperate, it will never land the way you hope. On the other hand, when your energy is centered, when you know your worth and don't feel the need to chase, it hits different. It feels solid, calm, self-possessed, and that's the kind of energy that draws people in. It makes them wonder. It creates space for them to initiate, and in that space they begin to feel your absence as presence. Energy doesn't lie. When you stop trying and start trusting, your entire vibe communicates, "I'm already enough. I don't need to force anything." That energy doesn't repel, it attracts, not by manipulation, but by resonance. People are drawn to what feels grounded, whole, and emotionally secure. And when you step into that space, you become someone who doesn't need to chase, because now you've become someone worth chasing. This isn't about silence or distance as a tactic, it's about alignment as a lifestyle. When your energy reflects self-worth, the external world responds, relationships realign, dynamics shift, and those who once overlooked your efforts start noticing your absence. They feel the difference, not because you're louder, but because you're no longer energetically available for what drains you. That's how your energy starts working for you, not by trying harder, but by standing stronger. And when that shift happens, the chasing stops on your end, because that's when it starts on theirs. When you stop trying so hard, you create space, emotional, energetic, psychological space, and in that space, something powerful happens. They start reflecting. Because when someone is used to your constant presence, your reassurance, your effort, your check-ins, your emotional labor, it becomes part of their environment. It's predictable, it's expected. They may not even consciously realize how much they rely on your consistency until it's gone. When you stop reaching out, when you don't follow up, when you don't ask, "Are you okay?" that absence speaks volumes. It interrupts the pattern, and when a pattern breaks, the mind wakes up. People reflect when they lose their emotional comfort zone. When your energy is no longer readily available, it forces them to take notice. They start thinking about why you pulled back, why you're no longer responding the same way, why your energy feels different. And that thinking doesn't just lead to missing you, it leads to understanding you. It leads to the realization that what you were giving wasn't ordinary, it was valuable. The things they once dismissed as just you being you now become the things they quietly wish they still had. That's the gift of space. It transforms appreciation from something unconscious to something deeply felt. This doesn't happen when you're constantly trying. When you're always showing up, always initiating, always doing the emotional work, you're not giving the other person any room to notice what life feels like without your effort. You're filling every gap. And in doing so, you're robbing them of the chance to feel your impact. When you step back even just a little, it creates a vacuum. And the human mind hates a vacuum. It rushes to fill it with thoughts, emotions, memories. And in that swirl, you become present again, not because you're in front of them, but because you're no longer available in the same way. Reflection is where awareness begins, and awareness is what leads to change. Not every person will act on that awareness, but every person will feel it. They'll feel the tension of your missing presence. They'll feel the silence where your support used to be. They'll start questioning what went wrong, and if they care enough, they'll want to fix it. And if they don't, then your silence gave you the answer your effort never could. Either way, you win, because the space you created by not trying has now revealed who truly values your presence, and who simply enjoyed your convenience. When you stop trying, you're not closing the door, you're opening the mirror, you're allowing the other person to see themselves clearly, maybe for the first time, and in doing so, you regain the power of perspective. You're no longer lost in trying to make something work. You're allowing the space to tell you whether it was ever working in the first place. That's the power of reflection, and it only begins when you finally stop filling all the space yourself. Attraction doesn't grow in pursuit, it grows in polarity. When you're always the one giving, always the one trying, you collapse the space that desire needs to breathe. It's easy to confuse effort with connection, but they are not the same. True attraction thrives when there is tension, not stress or anxiety, but space. Space for the other person to step up, space for mystery, space for movement. When you stop trying, you're no longer chasing approval, you're embodying presence. You shift from performer to magnet, and in that shift you create polarity. You move from force to flow. The energy of pursuit can quickly become one-sided. The more you do, the less they feel the need to do anything. Not out of malice, but because you've unconsciously taught them they don't have to. When you stop trying, you reverse that pattern. You create an opening for them to engage, not because you made them, but because you allowed them to feel your absence. That polarity is the birthplace of attraction. People are drawn to what's not guaranteed, to what holds its own ground, and when your energy becomes rooted in self, worth instead of outcome, you become that grounded presence that naturally pulls others in. Pulling back doesn't make you cold, it makes you balanced, it restores the give and take, it brings equilibrium where there was once overextension, and ironically, the less you try, the more interesting you become. Because now, you're no longer energetically chasing them, you're holding space, and space creates intrigue. It makes them wonder what you're thinking, what you're doing, why you've stopped reaching out. And in that wondering, curiosity is born, and curiosity is the spark that ignites pursuit. The dynamic changes when you become unpredictable. When you're not available on demand, when you stop showing up at full volume for someone who only ever listened passively, you shift the entire emotional playing field. They no longer know what you'll do next. That uncertainty, when coming from grounded self-worth, is intoxicating, not in a manipulative way, but in a magnetic one, because now you're not seeking validation, you are validation, you're no longer reacting. You're responding with discernment, and that's when polarity reaches its peak. Attraction doesn't require a performance, it requires alignment. When you stop trying, you step into your natural power, the power of being centered, calm, and clear about your value. That energy creates desire without demand. It awakens the other person not with pressure, but with presence. They feel the shift, they sense the gap, and if they truly care, they'll begin to move toward you. Not because they're being chased, but because they want to close the space you created. That's the beauty of polarity. That's the magic of not trying. When you're always available, always explaining, always filling in the emotional silence, you remove the very thing that drives desire, mystery. And mystery isn't about playing games or being distant just to create reaction. It's about preserving your sense of self. It's about holding on to your identity, your dignity, and your emotional independence. The truth is, the more someone can predict your responses, your next move, your effort, the less they feel inspired to invest. Predictability dulls emotional impact. When they know you'll always call, always care, always be there, they start to see your love as a constant, not a choice you make. But when you stop trying, when you begin to hold back just enough to breathe, you reintroduce the unknown, and that awakens curiosity. Think about it. People don't think about what's always in front of them. They think about what suddenly isn't. When you're not the first message in their inbox, when your name isn't lighting up their phone every morning, when your voice doesn't carry through every empty moment, they notice. They wonder, and that wondering creates emotional movement. That wondering is where they begin to feel again. It doesn't happen when you're constantly reminding them you exist. It happens when you go quiet long enough for them to remember you on their own. Letting go of the need to be heard all the time is scary. It triggers the part of you that fears being forgotten. But that's the illusion. The real risk isn't being forgotten. It's being taken for granted. And you can't be taken for granted if you're not constantly making yourself available. By giving someone space to miss you, you're honoring your own energy. You're stepping out of the emotional spotlight and letting them come forward into it. You're saying without words, if you want to be here, show me. I'm not performing anymore. This is not about creating emotional distance just to manipulate the situation. It's about restoring emotional dignity. You are not a background character in someone else's story. You're not an echo to their silence. You're a fully formed person who deserves to be remembered even when you're not present. So when you choose silence, when you stop reaching out, when you resist the urge to chase, you give the other person the greatest gift you possibly can, the opportunity to realize they miss you. And here's the secret. If they never come looking, you didn't lose anything. You revealed everything. You gave space, and they filled it with silence. That's not your rejection. That's your redirection. That's your sign to keep walking, because the one who is meant for you will feel your silence like a song stuck in their head. They'll remember the sound of your care, your truth, your love, and they'll chase not because you stopped, but because you finally gave them the space to start. When you stop trying, you send a powerful message, not just to them, but to yourself. I am enough exactly as I am. You stop overthinking, overdoing, overreaching, and instead, you lean into a quieter kind of strength, the strength of self-trust. You begin to understand that your value was never in how much you gave, how many chances you offered, or how far you were willing to go to keep someone close. Your value is in your presence, your energy, your truth, and when that truth is no longer given freely to someone who doesn't reciprocate, everything changes, the balance shifts, the dynamic flips. And what once felt heavy suddenly feels light because you're no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. The moment you stop trying to win someone over is the moment you win yourself back. Your time becomes your own. Your thoughts start revolving around your goals, your peace, and your healing, not what they're doing, thinking, or feeling. You step out of emotional survival mode and into self-leadership. And when you start leading your own life from a place of wholeness, you stop attracting from emptiness. You stop reaching out from wounds. You stop giving from guilt. And that kind of energy is rare. It's the kind of energy that makes people stop in their tracks. Not because you're doing anything to be noticed, but because you're finally being true to yourself. When you let go of the exhausting need to be chosen, you realize you've had the power all along to choose you. You no longer waste energy convincing someone to value what they don't see. Instead, you align yourself with those who feel your worth without you needing to explain it. You start to attract what mirrors your growth, not your fear, and when they feel that shift, when they sense that you're no longer emotionally available for anything half present or half interested, that's when they start to move. That's when they come forward, not because they're being manipulated, but because your absence becomes louder than all your previous effort combined. But here's the truth: when you stop trying, the outcome no longer controls you. Whether they come closer or walk away, it no longer defines your worth. You're no longer tied to their response to measure your value. You've already won because you've reclaimed your power, your peace, and your personal truth. And that energy is not only magnetic, it's unshakable. You're no longer hoping to be seen. You see yourself fully, clearly, proudly. So yes, when you stop trying, he may start chasing, but the real win, it's that you stopped chasing someone who wasn't chasing you. You stopped bleeding energy into places that didn't pour back. You stood still long enough to realize that the only one you ever needed to choose you was you. And from that place of quiet confidence, everything that is meant for you begins to find its way, not because you begged, but because you became undeniable. There is nothing more powerful than the moment you stop trying. Not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but from a deep, grounded clarity that says, I am no longer available for anything that doesn't honor me. That moment becomes a line in the sand, the place where you reclaim your time, your energy, your voice, and most importantly, your value. And the shift that happens after that is not only external, it's internal. You begin to live for you, you begin to rise for you, you begin to move through your life no longer seeking validation, but living in your truth. That's when the chase begins, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started choosing yourself. When you stop trying, you create emotional space, and in that space, people begin to notice what they lost. The attention they once took for granted is gone, the constant presence they were so used to fades, and now your absence starts speaking the very truth your words could never land. They feel you differently. They think about you more, not because you forced it, but because you removed the noise. That silence becomes louder than any argument, any explanation, any begging ever could be. And in that silence, they start chasing not the old you, but the you who finally stopped. But let's be clear, this speech was never about him. It was never really about getting someone to run after you. It's about you waking up. It's about you realizing that your worth was never tied to how much effort you could pour into someone else. It was always within you, buried under layers of overgiving, over-explaining, and over-sacrificing. This is the rebirth of your self-respect, the return to your personal power, the realization that trying harder isn't the key, rusting more deeply in yourself is. You don't have to prove your value anymore. You don't have to show up louder, bigger, or more desperately just to be loved. The right people will recognize your worth without you performing. The ones who are aligned with your truth will chase you, not because you withheld love, but because you stopped forcing connection. When you stopped running, you gave them the opportunity to step forward. And if they don't, that's your answer. Their silence becomes your closure, and your own peace becomes your path. So as you walk forward now quieter, stronger, clearer, remember this. You were never meant to beg to be seen. You were meant to become someone unforgettable, and when you stop trying, you finally start becoming. That's when alignment happens. That's when real connection shows up. And that's when the ones who couldn't see your value before will finally realize they were chasing the wrong things. Because you were the one worth chasing all along. Thank you so much for taking the time and energy to be here today. If you're still listening or reading this, know this truth. You're already on the path back to yourself. You didn't come here by accident. You came here because a part of you is ready to stop pouring into what doesn't pour back. You're ready to stop trying so hard to prove you're enough and start standing in the truth that you always were. I hope this message reminded you that your worth is not defined by how much you chase, give, or bend for someone else. Your worth is in your presence, your peace, your ability to walk away from what drains you and toward what honors you. And if you're stepping into that silence, into that letting go, into that shift, know that you are not weak, you are wise, you are strong, you are powerful beyond measure, and what's meant for you will never require you to shrink to receive it. As you move forward, I want you to carry this with you. You are not losing anyone when you stop trying. You are finding yourself. You are giving yourself the kind of love, patience, and energy you once gave away too easily. And when that shift happens, when you return home to you, everything in your life begins to realign. People feel that, energy doesn't lie, and trust me, the right ones will notice when your light starts shining inward instead of outward. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey today. Your growth is your gift, your silence is your strength, and your healing, it's already happening. Right now, in this very moment, keep going. Keep rising, keep honoring the version of you who finally said, enough, I choose me. Until next time. Thank you, take care of your beautiful energy, and goodbye for now.